There are a number of ways to add users in Ubuntu. We have the traditional user add command line utility, the add user command line utility, which abstracts away some of the complexity of user add, and we have a couple of graphical utilities as well. In this video, we'll take the easy way out and look mainly at the graphical ways for adding users in Ubuntu. So first, we'll go to our system settings, and we'll bring up the user accounts utility here in the lower right corner. So we click on it, and here it gives us a list of users that are currently in the system, and we can choose to add or remove or edit these users. But before we do that, we need to unlock it, and to do this, we need to authenticate ourselves as an administrator. So we put in our password, authenticate, and it tells me that I do have permission because now I can add a user, or I can click on a user and edit their details. So this other user called some user, I can actually just click the minus sign and then delete this user. Now before we delete a user, we're prompted to delete or keep their home directory. Since this is just a test user, we can delete the files, but if it was an important user in our system, someone with a lot of activity and a lot of documents, we might want to keep the files or at least back them up before we delete them. So let's just go delete files for this user, and now some user is gone. And to add a user, just click the plus, pick the account type, standard or administrator. Administrator lets the user run things as sudo from the command line or do things like unlock this user account management. Let's just click standard. I'll call it the same name, some user, and we'll leave username as some user. I'll click add, and there we've added the user. You'll notice here the account is disabled until we set a password for this account. So we'll click here and we'll set a password. If we don't want to choose one right now, we can set one by clicking these gears that will pick one for us. And it will randomly select characters and tell us if the password is good or strong or fair or weak. So we'll put what it picks us, and I'll just copy and paste this because I don't really care too much about remembering this password at this point. So we'll just click change, and now we've set a password. And this user, if they know the password or if we know the password, we can log in as that user. So that's the basic user accounts graphical utility that comes with Ubuntu. Now this is not the one that I typically use just because it's not quite as powerful. For the simple case for adding just a basic user like this, it is the easiest way, but if you need a little bit more control, I recommend installing the Genome system tools. So we can do that from the command line and do sudo apt-get install genome system tools. This will only take a moment to install, and then we'll have a look at it. Now, at one time, these Genome system tools were installed by default in Ubuntu, but since the shift from Genome to Unity, it's no longer installed by default. So now that I have it installed, I can go up to the dash and type users or user, and it shows it here. So user accounts is the one that comes with Ubuntu. Users and groups is the one provided by the Genome system tools. It looks somewhat similar, but we have a few more settings. So if I click on a user, say some user, and I click on advanced settings, so this advanced settings button, which I also need to authenticate to use, gives me a little bit more information to change. So contact information, these fine-grained user privileges that I can allow the user to have. And I can disable the account, change their home directory, change their shell from bash to something else. I can change their default group, and I can change their user ID. So there's a number of different tools that aren't available in the basic user accounts utility in Ubuntu, but we do have them here in this user settings or users and groups. It also provides group management, so I can click on manage groups, and it gives me a list of groups, all of the groups in the system, which the user accounts does not provide. So I recommend using this if you need a little bit more control over adding and modifying users. And that concludes this introduction to adding and modifying users in Ubuntu.